Audience. Okay, cool. All right, cool. We're live. All right, guys in the audience, welcome back to another live stream. I'm gonna try to do this every week where I have a guest on, whether it's a liberal or a conservative or whoever. But tonight's guest is Damani Felder. I think we actually met in DC, if I'm not mistaken, maybe a couple years ago for the Young Black Leadership Summit. I know our paths have crossed before, but we follow each other on social media either way. But go ahead and introduce yourself to the audience.
Yeah, well, thanks so much for having me, Mike. I appreciate it. The time really has flown since 2018 YBLS. But that was kind of when I started to speak out more vocally on social media myself. For those who don't know, my name is Damani Felder. I'm the founder of a YouTube channel called The Wright Brothers. I have a presence on Twitter at the Damani Felder. I'm on Telegram. I'm on TikTok, Facebook, Instagram as well. Just really trying to get the message out to people through whichever medium will have me. As you know, Mike, and as many others know, these are unprecedented times that we're in right now. And we've seen so much censorship take place. So I just feel honored to have some people who like to tune in to hear what I have to say, and I'm honored to be here with you.
Yeah, man, I'm glad to have you on. And yeah, it's crazy times we're living in. It's unprecedented. You said that you are the founder of the Wright Brothers. You're one half of the Wright Brothers, I'm assuming. Is your brother as active in politics as you?
He's outspoken. He also has a few more diverse interests than I do. He's also interested in the NBA and so on and so forth. But he's the other half of the duo. But really did start in earnest back in 2018. That was really when a lot of people I know really found their voice after the Young Black Leadership Summit in Washington, D.C. It was such an incredible opportunity to see the president face to face. And then I felt it was incumbent upon individuals to go home and do something with it, to wake up people who they were around, and to try to spread the message of truth in a world that seems more and more inclined towards lies. So ever since then, the channel has taken off. It's done well so far. And right now, we're kind of walking on eggshells because we don't know exactly what's going to happen with YouTube's censorship guidelines or what have you. But we're going to do the best we can to maintain our standing as a voice in these times that we're in right now.
Exactly. Yeah. And for those of you that want to subscribe to the Wright Brothers, it's pinned in the comments or it's pinned in the chat section. I guess it's a new feature. So you can find it. We'll also post it afterwards so you can subscribe. And then follow this man on Twitter. He's got some fire tweets. I follow him on Twitter. You got some great posts, man. They're pretty great. But yeah, right now with the censorship, it's just kind of, it feels like we are walking on eggshells, which it's kind of why I'm, there's only so much we can really talk about. So right now, I think everybody's just kind of tiptoeing. I know with Right Side Broadcasting, we're just kind of wading the water. This is why I want to do like interviews and more man on the street stuff. Because right now it takes very little to get your entire platform just taken away. I was taken down on both Facebook and Instagram this week. I guess I violated terms of service, their community guidelines on Facebook. And because Facebook owns Instagram, they deleted my Instagram page too, which was laughable because I never even post on Instagram. But that's neither here nor there. I'm all over the social media landscape now. I just had a meeting with the CEO of Clout Hub today. He gave me a tutorial of the website. I don't know if you're on there or not, but isn't it kind of weird to try to like navigate all these new social media platforms and have to set up like basically 8 different accounts and post the same thing in multiple places? How do you manage all that?
Yeah, it's really difficult. I'm not quite on what you said it was Cloud Hub. I'm not quite there yet, but I'm on Parlor. I was on Parlor before Parlor got taken down. Like I said, Telegram. I'm also on MeWe as well, and I've had some people reach out to me about mine. But it is a time where a lot of individuals feel like they are scrambling. And it's because these big tech companies essentially are all in league together. Seeing the coordinated way in which they took down President Trump only is a harbinger of more nefarious actions to come against anyone who dares to fly in the face of their narrative. So to your point, yeah, it really is frustrating to feel like you always have to start over. And I don't want to use Biden's phrase, build back better, but you have to be able to rebuild and start from scratch. And that can be a demoralizing feeling, and it's demoralizing by design because the overall goal that these companies have is they want you to just give up. And they know that if they can just get you to throw in the towel and throw your hands up, then essentially they've won that battle. And I, for one, refuse to let them win that battle.
Right. And I'm right there with you. And, sometimes my subscribers will disagree with me when I say, like, man, I'm staying on Facebook. I'm staying on these mainstream, that's what I call mainstream social media platforms, because that's where the fight is. It's behind enemy lines, right? That's where they don't want us speaking freely. So until they take me off, I'm going to continue speaking freely on those platforms, because that's where I can do the most damage. That's where I can reach people. Instagram was a great example of how the majority of people that follow me on there are from like high school, college, friends, family, people that are more on the left, or they're just not politically aware. They don't really pay attention to politics. I would post a lot of stuff on there. So I didn't violate any terms of service, but to lose my Instagram, to me, that's kind of damaging, because that's where I was making headway. It's great to support these other platforms. Like, I love the platforms like Gab, for example. I really like that platform. It's real streamlined, user interface is good, but it's an echo chamber, right? Anything I post on there, I already know basically everybody agrees. So it's fine, but it's not getting anything done per se. So I still support it, but it's also like, man, I would rather stick with the platforms that existed, because that's how the president got elected in the first place, was people sharing stuff on Facebook and Twitter and YouTube. And now we've basically been rendered to a handful of new platforms. And the other thing is spreading yourself so thin, right? When you have to set up like 10 platforms, your followers may only have 2 of those, and then some might have 2 other ones, but not the other one. So you're kind of like, it just diffuses the message. But you're right. It's all about demoralizing you, making you want to give up, making you want to cave in, and we just can't do it, man. So,
and you bring up a really good point too about feeling as if you're in an echo chamber on the right, and I think that is actually more harmful than it is productive. And there's a lot of leftists actually who I believe are, if they were honest with themselves, they would have to agree that they feel somewhat as if Twitter is a less fun place, because for some individuals, they made their entire being be about responding to President Trump's every single tweet. So now that President Trump is gone, they're realizing that, oh, well, there's not anything else for me to do, essentially. My usefulness has expired. So on both sides of the aisle, obviously, we do want to be around individuals who are going to affirm us and agree with us. But on the flip side, it is incredibly important to have that contradictory stance or contradictory view that is actually levied against you, because that keeps you sharp as a debater and as a thinker in general. If your thought process is never being challenged, you don't ever have a chance to actually learn from someone else's perspective, understand the mind of the other side, and then also understand and practice how to respond in kind in order to stay sharp. So that's a fantastic point you brought up.
Yeah. And speaking of President Trump being gone, obviously this is the first full day without him in the White House. And just what are your thoughts on President Trump being gone from the White House?
It still feels surreal, to be honest with you. I feel as if I'm living in some sort of weird, twisted, dystopian illusion. He was an individual who had a lot of gravitas. He sucked the air out of the room, either in person, as you and I both know, or online. So his absence is very conspicuously felt. And I think that a lot of people are coming to terms with that feeling of what now, whether you're on the left or on the right. He essentially was a galvanizing force, no matter if you were for him or against him. And now that he is no longer a presence, they're no longer there in Washington, D.C., the question becomes, what happens now? What do we do? And how do we respond and, if necessary, resist against these draconian policies being drawn up by Biden and his cronies? And we've already seen them do, in my view, a lot of harm with doing things like doing away with the Keystone pipeline, which was employing thousands of Americans, and just essentially more vindictively rescinding everything President Trump did, as if to say, okay, we're in charge now. Everything that happened in the past is no longer important or is no longer meaningful. Not to say that there are some things that some presidents do that the other administration wants to do differently. That's one thing. It's another thing when you are vengefully going out of your way to just repudiate everything your predecessor stood for nothing more than just optics. I do believe that individuals are having to have a sense of reckoning, trying to understand now where they fit in this new world, how long they'll be allowed to fit in this new world, and what their role will be therein. A lot of people, they had never been politically active before the 2016 to 2020 years, and now they're having to understand what to do now. We all knew that obviously, President Trump couldn't be president forever, but I don't think a lot of people were prepared for the abruptness of this change. And I don't think a lot of people are prepared to actually stand up and fight now. And if they aren't, they need to get really ready, because the left isn't going to sit there and wait for us to get ready. So now is the time for us to really gird up our loins, if you will, and figure out what the battle plan is going to be. Conduct that thorough self-autopsy, understanding how we could have done things differently. And I know there's a lot of people who are very much aware of the chicanery and irregularities of this election, which were brushed under the rug. That aside, there's individuals that we cannot influence, but there's some that we can. And the process always starts at the state and local level. So many times over the last 2.5 months, we saw individuals who were elected to those lower offices who essentially seemed like they just threw off any pretense of it and do their job correctly. And we have to look at those races, look at those seats. When can we replace them? Who can we replace them with? And honestly, in the grand scheme of things, I'm actually very relieved that we are at this point, not because President Trump is no longer in the White House, but because it is essentially that slap in the face that many people, I think, needed to have happen. We couldn't be asleep for forever. People are awake now. Now that we're awake, it's time for us to be productive. There are so many individuals who are saying, oh, just wait a little while longer, trust this, trust that, and so on and so forth. And now is the time for action, because midterms are next year, literally next year. What are we going to do in these next, 23 months, 22, 23 months before the midterms come up? Are we going to respond? Are we going to throw up our hands? Are we going to wring our hands? Are we going to walk away? All of these things that we are deciding to do now is what's going to help set the groundwork and set up that roadmap where we need to go.
Yeah, that was well stated. You said so much there. Going back to Biden, yeah, with him basically putting America last within his first 24 hours. I mean, he re-entered the Paris Climate Accord, which is garbage. We all know that. The Keystone Pipeline thing, canceled that, put a bunch of people out of work, and then instantly made us more dependent on foreign oil. See, they have this whole lie about we're going to improve on the climate. We're going to lower the temperature of the planet, which we know it's just not going to really happen. But they're going to make us more dependent on foreign oil while not reducing our carbon footprint one iota. It's just not going to happen, right? It's just, if anything, it makes it worse. But then the border wall construction, pausing that, hitting the pause button on that, it's crazy. He wasted no time doing this. But
you have to look at.
Go ahead.
No, you have to look at the reason behind why some of these policies were enforced in the first place. The goal of America First, it blows my mind to this day that there are individuals who hear the phrase America First, while they themselves are American citizens, who are offended by that statement. You should want your country to be preeminent. You should want your country to be the best that it can be. When you look at things like the Paris Climate Accord, or even all these global initiatives that we were a part of, we were not getting a fair deal. We were the ones who were getting shaken down from the rest of the world. The world relies on us. They always come to us for help for everything. And when we are the ones under duress or in distress, these countries either refuse to help or are not able to help. So part of the reasoning behind even withdrawing from those policies in the first place was saying, look, other countries need to pay their end of the deal. That is how business is done. Anyone who has run a business or has been part of a business knows that there is a bottom line. Somewhere along the line, individuals, politicians specifically, began to look at the government as if it was this bottomless pit of cash that you could just use wherever you wanted. And essentially, the bill is always going to come due. And when you look at things like the border wall, why would you want to remove a resource that is meant to protect your own citizens and make sure that the right individuals are going to come into this country. Why would you want to do that? The only reason you want to do that is because you do not stand for America at all. You have been essentially bought and paid for, as we all now know, by multiple countries, and you exist to do their bidding. So it's very, very disquieting how quickly this has all started. And I think that's why a lot of us kind of have almost a deer in the headlights feeling right now. But we can't afford to sit there for long because that truck or that train is coming. If you don't have a plan or a plan to either stop it or get out of the way, it's going to be very dark days ahead for America.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's also kind of weird that, Trump was taken off of Twitter because, first of all, he made Twitter what it was. Twitter sucks now. It's not even fun to be on there. I love to see his tweets and everybody just melting down. He lives in their head regardless of if he's on Twitter, whether he's in the White House or not. He lives in their head. But it's weird to not see him tweet, especially now that Biden's in office and he's going to start passing his laws and signing his executive orders. You would want to hear what the former president has to say. So, of course, they want to shut him up now. I guess he's back on Facebook, but I wouldn't know because I'm not on there. But it's just kind of weird that we're not hearing from him. So that's uncomfortable for a lot of people. That's a little unsettling.
To that point, too, it's even more uncomfortable than it would be typically because President Trump utilized Twitter as a way to circumvent the obviously and shamefully biased mainstream media. That was his direct line to the American people. And millions of Americans would hang on his every word. And, I even think about those times when you could say he was being petty. To me, that's just funny. That's just what America always has been. We like talking a big game or dunking on our adversaries, if you will. And it's refreshing to see someone who is so very relatable. Politicians became very well known for saying all the right things and accomplishing nothing. So to have a politician who was able to speak in a manner the average American sitting in West Virginia or North Carolina or Idaho or Montana or South Dakota or Wyoming could understand, that's refreshing. And it makes you feel like there's an individual that you would love to just go sit next to and have a beer or something like that. But now that he has been silenced by big tech, it allows the left to run roughshod. And they really have shown their entire hand. It's very upsetting seeing what they deem to be news now. They're talking about Kamala Harris's outfits, and they're talking about Joe Biden and his dog, and they're talking about, oh, Joe Biden did this meaningless thing. Oh, he ate some ice cream. Who cares? At the end of the day, I want someone to be actively getting the job done for Americans, for Black Americans, white Americans, Hispanic Americans, Asian Americans, Middle Eastern Americans, and so on and so forth. If you're not doing that, I don't really care what else you're doing. But you see how we've been inculcated to believe that the presidency is some sort of grandiose theater, like it's a theatrical deal where we're just looking at someone, oh, he went out to a restaurant. I remember there was a video I saw on YouTube of Barack Obama going to some burger stop or whatever. And all the employees were just falling all over themselves like it was the coolest thing ever. Oh, look, he's going to get burgers. Does anyone care? How does that actually help? How many times did you see President Trump go out to get a burger or something like that over his presidency? Really, he didn't. I remember watching or seeing a picture of him with KFC or McDonald's on an airplane. I remember seeing him staying up till 3 a.m. waiting for our service people who were held hostage to come home. I remember all that. I don't remember him going out and doing these weird publicity stunts that we saw previous presidents do. And that's what endeared him to so many people. So now that we're back into the same monotonous cycle of political nothingness, it's infuriating, to be honest with you. And I'm trying to be measured right now, but the more I talk about it, the more I realize what a sham has been perpetrated on the American people and how we need to keep that fire lit that's burning brightly right now, keep it lit and channel that energy into something that's productive that will help us move forward to make sure that this never happens again because we can't afford for it to.
Yeah. Yeah. And I've been telling people to try to look at any positive aspect you can of the situation we're in. That some people hear what they want to hear. They hear it as you're saying, accept Biden. No, I'm saying, what can we do? What kind of strategic moves can be made because he's in office? For me, I'll give you a good example. Now I can highlight clearly for friends and family who they didn't like Trump, but they're not sold on Biden, but they still voted for Biden because they thought it would make things better. Now they're going to see things are worse. And now I can say, hey, look, here's a side-by-side comparison. You said Trump was bad at this, this, and this. Well, look at what Biden just did. Nothing on his executive order list was America first. None of it benefited white Americans, Black Americans, Asian Americans. Nobody benefited from his executive orders thus far. And now we're going to see gas prices go up. That's a good way to start a conversation with somebody, right? Because they can see the contrast. Like, you may not have liked Trump, but two things can be true at once, right? You could dislike him, say, oh, I don't like him tweeting. Like my mom said, I don't like his tweeting, but she likes the pro-business environment. My family's independent. We like to work, be self-reliant, all that stuff. It's a pro-business environment under the president, right? Low gas prices. Now, under Biden, you'll see all of that riffraff. You'll see other countries being put first. And now the Democrat-controlled Congress, there's no Republicans to blame. You can't blame Republicans. You got the majority. That's what I mean. That's an example of how more people are going to wake up. More people will walk away. More people will see that it's a sham. You know, it's one thing to just blame everything on Trump. You can't blame everything on Trump anymore. Now, and I love how creative people are being on Twitter. Like, yeah, there's 8,000 people died today. I mean, Biden's presidency is already causing deaths. They did the same thing for Trump. It sounds petty, but I mean, you're basically turning it back around on them. Like, either it matters or it doesn't. Yeah. You know, like they blame Trump for everything. They say, oh, this is Obama's economy. So when the economy inevitably goes back up, we're going to say it's Trump's economy, because I mean, it's true, but they were saying, oh, it was Obama's economy after President Trump signed all those trade deals, renegotiated stuff. They made it about Obama. So we can do the same thing to them. I think it's just a way to kind of keep things stirred up while also bringing people over to the truth and just let them know, like, hey, look, now you see why they all forced him out. You see why every establishment figurehead wanted him gone. And now look at the way things are.
You got to keep him honest. What I think about is after he signed the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act back in late 2017, I believe, I remember that next year, I wasn't the only one who benefited from that. There were tens and thousands of people who were receiving extra money from their employers who, by virtue of the tax codes, were no longer penalized for being successful or penalized by having a higher tax rate, and therefore they were able to turn around and give individuals more money. Do you know how many individuals who still got that money in 2017 probably still turned around and voted against President Trump, not even realizing he's the reason that they got that extra money in the first place? This cognitive dissonance is so alarming, but it's honestly very indicative of the meticulous way in which our mainstream media has lulled the populace to sleep. Our mainstream media thinks the average American is stupid, and honestly, for the majority of Americans, unfortunately, they're not too far from right on the mark. When you've got Americans who can't even remember what a candidate said a year or two ago, and then they go and vote for them anyway. I'm talking in this case about how Kamala Harris said that she believed Joe Biden's accusers back when he and her were going head to head back in the Democratic primary. Do people remember that? And they just let that go because they realize the average American has the attention span of a fruit fly. So they can pull out whatever article or headline they want and run with it, knowing that the average person does not have either the intrinsic wherewithal or the desire in general just to actually fact check and understand if they are being taken for a ride or being having the news delivered to them honestly.
Yeah, that's why I say the truth is a value. You have to value the truth. You have to want to know if what you believe is real or not. Even if it goes against your feelings or what you want to be true, you got to know if it's true or not. And too many people don't care if it's true or not. They care that it lines up with their belief, with what they already thought. If it confirms their bias, that's what they care about. So it made it easy for the media to run repetitious headlines that smeared the president, that said whatever, because the headline alone would do it, would get people to it just reinforce what they already believed. And of course, they're going to run all these puff pieces for Biden now, thinking people are too stupid to notice. And some people are, like you said, some people, they just don't get it. They don't care that now that Biden's in office, we're going to hear all these stupid stories that nobody actually cares about while we're still in this pandemic. They keep talking about it. Pandemic, pandemic. Now, all of a sudden, they don't really want to talk about it. They're talking about his plan for the vaccine and Fauci and how they're going to work together, even though it's Trump's vaccine rollout plan. They're talking about, here's how Biden's going to do it differently. Biden took the little button off of his desk to summon up a Diet Coke. These are headlines they're running with now, fawning over him. Or Chris Wallace from Fox News said that was the best inaugural speech he's ever heard in his life. What did you think of that?
Yeah, of course. Chris Wallace has been a partisan shill and a hack for a while now. And I think it took the last 4 years for individuals who in the past were kind of just holding their nose and going with the flow, just not to rock the boat, to really lower that veil and expose their true selves. And that is the silver lining I take away from all of this. If there's one of the greatest accomplishments that President Trump, I think, actually pulled off was the ability to strip people's fake pretenses away so they had to show you who they really were. We saw how vicious and unprincipled and unscrupulous many media personalities were. Not just Chris Wallace, but also Katie Turn, Jim Acosta, Caitlin Collins, the list goes on and on. But some individuals, they thought they could just essentially ride it out. And they thought they didn't have to pick a side. And that extends to politicians, GOP politicians, who for the last 4 years, we knew they may not have been in Trump's corner, but they knew not to speak out against him while he was the president. And we saw exactly who they were. We saw who refused to stand up for the president when he needed them after they relied on his endorsement to be elected in the first place. That is something that we cannot afford to forget. Every individual who pulled a Lindsey Graham or every individual who acted like Mitt Romney, we need to be, I'm not going to say what Maxine Waters said, but they're getting the same treatment that they actually deserve because they deserve to be harassed essentially for the rest of time for their fecklessness and their feebleness and their unwillingness to enforce the laws as they stand simply because of their own personal prejudices. So we need to remember who those people are. And when the next time comes to vote them out, we need to vote them out in the same numbers we went to go vote President Trump in. And if we don't, these problems will persist.
Absolutely. Let me give a shout out to Chris Jolly. Thank you for the super chat, as well as Idris. I hope I pronounced that right. Thank you both for your super chat. Appreciate it. Now, what's her name? Marjorie Taylor Greene just introduced articles of impeachment against Biden, which, I mean, they're bound to go nowhere, but she still did it. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think that's just a political play? Do you think that's just her trying to get clout, or do you think it's serious? What are your thoughts on it?
I think time will tell. If anyone deserves to be impeached, it is Joe Biden. I know that by virtue of the Democratic majority in the House and in the Senate now, that pretty much anything that is anti-Biden or anywhere near pro-Trump is going to be dead on arrival. So it remains to be seen if it was a purely theatrical move or a move to appease the many jilted Trump supporters out there to show that they're willing to go that far. I'm not sure what really good could come of it at this point. And what I would argue is that we should be focused more on introducing legislation to do away with voting by machine for forever. If we're going to pick a battle, it's time for us to pick our battles smartly and say, what is it that got in the way for our 2020 election? And how can we make sure that we fully and thoroughly dismantle that so that I don't care if COVID 21 plus extra max comes from China, in 2022, we need to make sure that there is a method in place in order for us to ensure that we have elections that are fair, free, and secure, and not just the ones that the media wants to call fair, free, and secure. So who knows what Marjorie Taylor Greene's efforts will actually lend themselves to, but I do know that a lot of those newer congressmen and women who are there actually do see what really happened, and many of them were the ones who stood up to show support. There were a lot of feckless senators who did not show the same level of support when we had even the electoral vote counting that went on in January 6th. So what we need to do is make sure that we support the right individuals. And if there are individuals who are willing to publicly take a stand, then those are the ones who deserve our support now, because it has never been more disadvantageous to show your support for the American people than it is right now. So the ones who do will be remembered accordingly.
Yeah. Yeah. And it starts at the state and local level. Yeah, we got to do something about this, voting by mail, mass voting by mail, and then voting with the machines, using the machines to count the ballots. It needs to be by hand, it needs to be audited by a Democrat and a Republican, one person, one vote, and you got to show your ID. I mean, this is like elementary stuff. This is something you would explain to a group of kindergartners. Here, you only get one vote, fill out one bubble and turn it in, and we're going to count it by hand. You have to explain this to adults, people that run, our elections. It's ridiculous. So what is the political climate like in Texas? That's where you live at, right? Texas. What's the political climate looking like there for 2022 and beyond?
Well, unfortunately, Texas in many ways is starting to turn more blue than I would like, because it's following the trend of America as a whole. We know that the liberals, they love to gravitate towards the larger cities where they feel they have some sort of a voice. And then they essentially, it is those in the suburbs and the rural communities who are the ones who realize and recognize America for what it is. So here in Texas, I mean, yes, we did hold the line and keep it red in 2020, but we need to start having serious conversations about running strong candidates in 2022 and beyond. There are individuals such as Greg Abbott and what's his name, Dan Crenshaw, who really did show their true colors in this last election cycle. And it is time for political opportunists to get out of the party, if we wish there to be a party to begin with. Maybe there will be a third party that will come up. Who knows? But the fact remains that in these states and cities that we have now, these blue states or blue cities, they are proliferating out of control. And the most disquieting thing about Texas is Texas has always been essentially the last stand of the republic in many ways. And a lot of Californian companies and Californian people they fail to realize that Gavin Newsom and all of his lackeys there in California are the reason that their state is essentially unlivable. But then those people, they move here to Texas and they bring their policies with them. And that is the manner in which you systematically destroy a country. It's as if there's a plague or a shadow sweeping across the states. And if you get to one state and the shadow stays there long enough, you're always going to be in darkness. So we need to, I'm not saying we should, build a wall around Texas or other red states, but it's become important for us to realize that these people are coming here. And if we are going to be cowed into silence right now, or cowed into inaction, then they are the ones who will essentially steamroll and ruin another beautiful state. And we can't let that happen.
Yeah, I wonder if some of them are doing it on purpose. I think of it as like ideological arson. You move from California to Texas because Texas is red. You probably know why California is so bad, but you think it's good, but you don't want to, accept that California sucks because Democrats ran it into the ground. You move to Texas. Next thing you know, Dallas County is turned blue. They turn those big cities blue, more blue, and then those like suburban counties, and then they can flip the whole state, which would flip the whole country, and then give them single party rule. So we have to worry about that in Florida too, because we have a lot of people relocating from New York. Cuomo has driven out so many New Yorkers. It's not even funny. In Florida, you're more likely to encounter somebody with a East Coast accent than you are a Southern accent. We have so many people here from Philly, from New York, from Boston, from these deep blue Northeastern liberal areas that have moved down here, and they brought their politics with them. I've never seen in my neighborhood, it's mostly all Trump flags, but I saw way more Biden flags than I wanted to. I'll just say that. And and a lot of the people that I've met are from up north. So they brought their politics with them. And it's really dangerous, because if Florida and Texas were, assuming all of our elections were legit and they weren't rigging them, if Florida and Texas were to turn blue, that would be it. They would never lose another election. I mean, it's bad enough they got Georgia. They've been wanting Georgia. Georgia, Texas, and Florida were the big three they were trying to get. They got Georgia. As far as I'm concerned, I don't think Georgia is going to turn red again. I don't see Brian Kemp running for reelection. If he does, he'll get blown out of the water. Any Republican they put up, I feel like the voters in Georgia are going to be demoralized unless they clean up their election. But I don't know, because the guy that's in charge of their state is corrupt and he's a Republican. So where do you go from there? You know? And let me give a shout out to Let's Be Frank real quick, and I'll let you answer. Let's Be Frank, appreciate you for the super chat. He says, don't forget to share, help out your favorite content creators. Appreciate it. Yes, guys, share this on social media. All right, go ahead, man.
But yeah, what I wanted to say was, what is it that the leftists always do? They are very obnoxious, and they're very tenacious, and they get involved. Almost every single day for the last 5 years now, they were out in the streets, chanting, acting a fool, screaming at the sky, doing something. And that's energy that they continue to have. And they have that, and they maintain that consistently. So now the shoe's on the other foot. If I told the viewer who's watching right now, hey, if you go to your city council meeting every month for the next 48 months, that will secure the presidency for us in the long run, then people will be rushing to do it. But people have this sense of futility right now, and I understand it. But those are the actions that help you begin making those changes you need to make in order to achieve a desired result. I know that a lot of individuals are tired and burnt out right now. What you need to do, though, is realize that the work has to begin now. And if that means you have to sacrifice 1 day per week, 1 day per month to go out and do something and be politically involved, politically active, go knock on doors, go block walk, and so on and so forth. If you're not willing to do that, then how much do you really love the country? It's a question you have to ask yourself. If you're not willing to put in the blood, sweat, and tears, I'm not just talking about even just sitting on social media, because a lot of people feel like that is a form of activism, and it is. But there's nothing that will supplant just being out and about and in someone's face, trying to wake them up or trying to lay the groundwork for success. But if you're not willing to donate time to this, if you're not willing to spend time accurately vetting candidates and going to town hall meetings or speaking up or joining your school board and being involved in that, that's the reason the left has America in a vice grip right now, is because they've got all the corporations, they've got the young people from a very young age, they're all over the education system. And so they've infiltrated everything, and they've allowed their thought process to permeate and poison the minds of the most impressionable. And there are a lot of young people who ran out to vote for the first time, not ever having paid really taxes in their life, ostensibly, who chose to vote for someone who wants to raise their taxes. So if we're not willing to donate time, the question is, what does it cost? What should it cost? If it costs you everything, that would be enough, because America is the last bastion of freedom. And if it takes every last ounce of your will and your strength and your might and your fortitude to preserve it, then it is your duty to lay aside any other distractions and focus on this goal, because there are very few chances that we get in this world to get a second chance. If we want one, we have to demonstrate that and go out and work accordingly.
I agree. And also, I think it is a multi-pronged approach. It's not just running for office and weeding out the corrupt election officials or mayors and city councilmen. It's also culture. There's a cultural aspect to it too, because the left dominates culture. They own academia, which is why they can basically factory farm a communist mind. They just propaganda. They're going to cram down critical race theory and everything else and just tell kids America sucks. So kids will naturally grow up thinking America sucks. And it's like a factory farm. They're just churning them out on a conveyor belt. Right. And then next thing you know, they're voting Democrat without even thinking why, without even understanding the difference between freedom and tyranny. They won't know any different. They'd be on autopilot at that point. So yeah, I think, that's a big part of it, is getting back control of the school system. It's these corrupt school boards that, that have a big say so on what goes in textbooks and what books go where and what kids go where. And the propaganda just makes it so that they vote Democrat. And then
Hmm.
within the culture, of course, you got rap music, you got stupid TV shows, you got a lot of in culture. I talk about this a lot. Like when we were growing up, I'm assuming you're around my age. We had Family Matters, we had the Cosby Show, we had
Hmm.
Fresh Prince of Bel Air. We had different shows where it showed like the traditional family. There wasn't a lot of profanity and nudity, but they've demoralized the youth. They've taken our culture and subverted it and made it evil. And it's
Yeah.
so evil. It gets more evil by the day. Netflix, that show Cuties, all this stuff, that's controlled by the left. They
Hmm.
control culture, they control music, entertainment, media, academia, and now the entire federal government. And it's just, we have to, I think it's multi-pronged approach. There's so many different aspects to it. That's why I appreciate people like Bryson Gray with his
Hmm.
rap music. There's different people that are putting out films. You know, Dinesh D'Souza is a great filmmaker. There's people that have, you know, social media people that are tech savvy, coming up with these new platforms. There's alternatives coming out for YouTube. There's one for Facebook, that Cloud Hub, I think has a lot of promise. So yeah, there's just a lot of different things we got to do.
We have brilliant people that litter the conservative spectrum. And if we could get all of them to get on the same page and work together and not be short sighted or not be opportunistic or not be so focused on necessarily monetary gain, but more focused on the goal, we could duplicate everything the left does and do it better. I've never laughed more than these last several years looking at the endless memes that we all, just normal everyday people, have created. And we're better at it than the left, and they know it and they hate it. That's part of the reason why, I've enjoyed success on TikTok, even though I know it is a Chinese controlled app. I'm using the enemy's tool against them. And I've been able to use humor as a way to connect with people because the left, and I try not to be too generalizing with this, but seriously, the average leftist is so easy to make fun of. It's almost not fair. When you can juxtapose their extreme and abject duplicity and disingenuousness, you can't help but to laugh at how foolish these people are. And so, if we were to actually put aside any pettiness or any turf wars or so on and so forth and just come together, I know that we could create a solution that is better than the entities we have today. But we have to start somewhere, and it might be rocky and all, but there are individuals who are willing to do it. So now it's incumbent upon us to put the pieces together and essentially, metaphorically, come out swinging.
Yeah. Yeah. And here's the thing, too. There's a portion of the conservative movement, Trump supporters, that don't agree with this. They basically are, they still believe that there is a plan in place that's being carried out behind the scenes, and the military has seized Capitol Hill and the White House, and there's this huge operation, and Trump will be inaugurated on March 5th or something like that. What are your thoughts on this?
I am not ashamed to say that I'm a Christian, and that one of the verses that has always spoken to me is that faith without works is dead. That does not mean that it is bad to have just faith or just works. It means that there should be a healthy balance of the two. You should have faith that God will take care of you, but also be willing to get up and go to work. If you apply that lens and that thought process to everything in life, then yes, you can trust whatever you want, but are you doing something to help accomplish the end goal? I know there's people out there who bought fully into the trust the plan phenomenon, but the question is, was that all they ever did? Was all they did was, read a couple message boards or drops or what have you, whatever they call them, and then say, okay, well, I'm just going to sit here and wait and trust everything's going to be okay. No, action is required. And to whom much is given, much is required. So if we have these people who are crushed right now or clinging on to hope, wherever you're at on the spectrum, we are all on the same team. At the end of the day, we all wanted the same outcome. The question is, since we did not get that outcome, regardless of if it was fair or not, how are we going to put aside what faction of the right we are on and come together to realize that our most common and most foremost goal should be the preservation of the republic. If we can put that all aside and just do that, we can get somewhere. But the left is counting on us essentially cannibalizing ourselves at this point, where the group who supports Q, they're gonna be mad and hate the people who were against them or didn't buy into it, or the people who were in this faction can no longer coexist with people in this faction. If we destroy ourselves, the left will win forever, and they know that. And they know that the chips are down right now and people are despondent. But we can't afford to let them continue to beat us and allow us to beat ourselves.
Yeah, I agree. And I've been critical of the Q movement, not of the people that follow it, but of the posters, the people that were telling us a year ago that lockdowns were good, that Ellen DeGeneres was going to get arrested in May of 2020. That literally didn't happen. So that person is a liar. And I don't respect liars. And they misled millions of people to think the lockdowns were good. And so therefore you didn't have as much resistance to the lockdowns. Now look at us. Here we are a year later. We're still locked down. We're still locked down. Biden is about to pass a mask mandate federally. It's not going to happen in Florida, but he wants to pass a mask mandate. And who knows what's going to happen with this medical tyranny? What are you going to be able to do or not do if you don't get the vaccine? There's a lot of stuff that Q pretty much just said, or not Q, but the people that were interpreting these messages and then sending it out to their followers were saying pretty much like, just trust the plan. The Patriots got it. This is good. This is good. Some of the names out there, they were saying all this stuff. And I'm like, this feels more like a psyop. This feels like neutralizing the opposition. Whereas if people were hearing the truth, like, no, this is not good. This is not a military covert plan. These lockdowns are draconian. People are getting put out of work. Was there a better plan than putting millions of people out of work to arrest Hillary Clinton? They couldn't come up with a better plan than that. Oh, by the way, they're spreading it all online. So how's it a secret? You mean to tell me that John Podesta and James Comey can't decode this message board, but some random person can? I'm just saying, like, the egotistical mindset of these people that misled a lot of Trump supporters. And these Trump supporters, they follow me too. So I'm like, yo, I'm here for you, but I got attacked for it. I get, lots of downvotes. People like, you don't trust the plan. So they kind of lashed out at me because I'm a man of faith. I believe in God. I trust God. God's plan will always supersede man's plan, period.
Right.
He's the end all be all, Alpha and Omega. That's it. Right. But there's people who have been brainwashed into a cult-like following where they worship this invisible thing, this military plan that's non-existent. They were saying Biden was going to get arrested yesterday and that all these people in the deep state were going down. And that's why Capitol Hill was surrounded. I mean, so that would in turn make people think like, oh, well, it's good. They got it. The Patriots got it. Right. See, that's what I'm saying. I've been saying, like, I'm not trying to be divisive. I'm just telling the truth. Like, these people like Lynn Wood literally lied to people, saying a bunch of stuff was going to happen that didn't. And all these people trust Jeff Sessions. Should we have trusted Jeff Sessions? Now it's trust Pompeo. All these different things, man. And it's driving me crazy. I don't know if you've seen it as much as I have.
Oh, yeah.
I get it. It's insane. And these are people that are supposed to be on our side. And I'm like, yo, this ain't it.
To be honest, I heard about Q about 3 years ago now, and that whole phenomenon. And I always seek to be informed. So even though I never came out and made a video about it or said, oh, I support it or not, I was aware of it. But even though I was aware of it, I was still getting busy doing something. I don't care what kind of, trust the plan or whatever you got going on. But do you realize that if everyone on our side, all 75 plus million of us who are actually alive and breathing, if we all tomorrow said, hey, if we're going on a plane, we're going to take off our masks. Going to the store, take off the mask. Don't wear it anymore. If we all did that at once, one or two things would happen. Either everyone gets kicked out or the business goes under. You cannot isolate and ostracize yourself from that large of a group of people without severe and swift consequences if the pressure is continuously applied. If you do that, I would argue if you did that just for 1 week, we'd be back to normal because we are the majority. And that is not just some euphemism. That is a fact. We are the majority here in America. And if we allow ourselves to be cowed into silence or allow ourselves to essentially go with the flow to not rock the boat, essentially the boat's going to sink and you're going to be in it looking real stupid because you didn't want to make any waves. It's time to make waves. I make it a habit whenever I can, whenever I'm going somewhere. If they say you have to wear a mask, I just wear it right under my chin. I don't care. And people usually don't even say anything. But it's that sort of resolve and that sort of return to a principled mentality that's going to get us out of this mess that we allowed ourselves to get in, because we're like those frogs that sit in a pot for too long and the heat gets cranked up more and more, and eventually you get boiled to death. Well, it's damn near boiling time at this point. And if we don't jump out of that pot soon, we will be destroyed, and it will be our fault and our fault alone.
Yeah. Yeah. And I don't even take my mask anywhere. I have to keep it in my car because when I go to Orlando, sometimes you can't get in some places, and then I travel. So that's the only time I'm wearing it. I have to get on the plane. I'm going to do it. But if I'm just going to Home Depot, I walk right in. Right. And now I'm starting to see employees aren't even wearing their masks. It's so lax in some of these counties, at least in Florida, these red counties. Yeah, it might still, there's no mask mandates here, not in my county, not in the county surrounding me. So when people go into the store, they don't have to wear their mask, but these corporations are saying you still have to wear your mask, you still have to social distance, all of that. But they don't realize that the people who are employed at that store live in that county and they don't agree with the mask mandate. So therefore, they're not going to go out of their way to enforce it. I remember when the pandemic first started, I walked into Walmart and there was a lady in the front and she's like handing out masks and she was trying to police everybody. So people were just naturally compliant. They're like, I don't want to deal with it. But as time went on, they're like, I'm going to wear it under my chin. And then they're like, why even wear it at all? And then next thing you know, they're leaving it at home. And then employees would leave it at home. And then more people stopped wearing it. And I think that is, even though it's slow, it is getting us back to normal. So I agree 100%. That's what it takes. It takes action. We need like maskless Mondays or something.
Yeah, that's all it would take. The dumbest thing is you walk up to some of these, smaller stores too, and you see the employees sitting there and their masks aren't on. As soon as they hear that door open, the mask goes up. I'm just like, are we playing a game at this point? Is this peekaboo? Like, we've got to stop this weird manipulation right now, because I know people, they want to have good intentions and so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, the fact remains, even if you do get this virus, what are the odds that you're going to die? Statistically, someone your and my age, 99.997%, I believe, you're going to pull through, right? Even for the elderly, 95%, right? So even if that is the case, why are you living as if you are diseased? And this kind of ties into the masterful and really insidious nature behind all this to begin with, is they are essentially breeding. It's so sad. I have a niece who was just born, and she was born throughout all of this. So literally, this is all she knows. This is normal. And that kind of breaks my heart to a small degree. But if you are getting an entire group of people, especially the impressionable young people, to think that this is normal and to view their counterparts as if they should be feared or avoided, that's what the baseline of this social distancing really is. Stay away from me. I don't want to be around anyone. Like, let me just be in my little silo and make sure I protect myself. And if they're never going to take away this power overreach, and we know they're not going to unless they're forced to, then it's just going to get worse. Essentially, in their perfect world, we would live in a prison planet where everyone has their little 6x6 cell and everything is sanitized and just fine, and you wear your mask and you go out and you can only go out from this time and this time. We are very close to that right now. It's no longer some dystopian 1984 novel or what have you. It is here right now. And we can kick the can down the road, but that road is almost played out. So we got to figure out how we're going to resist this unless we have the next generation begin to have their minds poisoned and think that this all is normal, because it's not.
Yeah. And millennials make up the largest voting bloc in the country right now. And I know people on the left that they're outside of the establishment. They don't support the neoliberal establishment, the Nancy Pelosi types. They're more in line with the AOCs and Bernie Sanders. They acknowledge that Washington, D.C. is broken and doesn't work for people. They hate the establishment. They hate war. They actually want America first policies, but they just think that it needs to be a bigger government that takes over and, centralizes power, takes over the healthcare industry, and that government should organize society. So they'll acknowledge that the government is corrupt and wicked, but they also want to grow the government. They're like, they need more tax money. So that's the cognitive dissonance that I'm trying to crack through, because I think if you can get those people to wake up, they're not as brainwashed. They just have horrible ideas. They just think this is the way we need to go in America. Those ideas, I think, are dangerous, and they've been tried on every continent and led to millions and millions of deaths. And I'm on the opposite end. I'm like, we need to limit the government. The government's already too big. The government footprint is already way too big. So if we can get some of those people to see what's going on, get them to recognize, like, what do you want your kid to grow up in? What kind of environment do you want them to live in? Because right now, the psychological damage is being done to a 5-year-old that has to wear a mask, a 5-year-old that can't get to know his friends and, have a true childhood, is going to be psychologically damaged. It's going to be more like timid and introverted, not building character, interacting with people, dealing with bullies, meeting girls, whatever it is. Like, kids need to grow up the way that we grew up to even have a shot at a real future, a real America. If the kids of now, if they don't grow up with at least as much freedom as we have right now, then we failed. If my kids don't grow up with at least as much freedom as I have right now, then I failed, period. It's not all on me, but I'm going to do everything I can, but I'll still feel like, damn, what could I have done? What more could I have done to make sure my kids grow up to be free? Like, seriously free, not wearing masks, not capitulating and, acquiescing to all these new government norms and just accepting that the government knows what's best. We have to somehow the far left, the people that pretty much have communist beliefs, kind of, sort of, they have to be able to see it's not going to work. And I think that they'll see it under this Biden administration. If Biden in office doesn't wake people up, then we're doomed anyway. It's one thing that they hated the president the whole time. They hated Trump. Okay, now you got everything you want, and now you'll see how miserably it fails. If that doesn't wake them up, I don't know what will.
It's time for, if there was ever a time for a great awakening, it's now. It was yesterday, actually. And it's unfortunate, though, because even like you said, if they don't see it and we're done, the sad reality is that even if they do see it, we already are maybe at 50-50. And people don't want to hear that. People don't want to say that, but we really are. We are on the brink, and this could go either way. But what's going to tip the scale is if there are individuals on one side or the other who are going to apply more pressure and essentially say, no, I'm not going to do this anymore. This is a line in the sand I'm not going to let you cross over. And if we adopt that mentality, we can save the next generation and save the country. But if we don't, then evil will continue to extend across the country. And it's already extremely deplorable. I use that word intentionally, what is going on right now. And if we let it continue, then there's nothing else to look forward to. So the action starts now with people like yourself and many others out there who are willing to take a stand. But for every person that takes a stand, it's time for us to find 5 other people, so that when the time comes in 2 years or 4 years, that we're showing up and we have a body of proof for what the next 4 years are going to look like, or next 2 years will look like. We can say that, we'll be okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let me read these last few super chats and then we can wrap up. Let me put this one on the screen here so I can read it easier. Patriots Awaken says, time to stand up and get involved. Started a YouTube channel interviewing those who walked away and more. If y'all know anyone interested, let me know. Stay strong. Email me. We'll see if we can get you some subscribers and we'll see if we can put you on. That's what I'm talking about. You know, get people set up YouTube channels, do whatever you can. And then also Leo says government mandates are socialism and communism. Yeah, it's really, it's all the isms. It's authoritarianism. It's everything. It's bad. It's all bad. So I guess, yeah, we can wrap now. I guess if you want to just remind people where they can follow you, tell them where they can find you, and then also tell us what you're up to for this year.
Yeah, on Facebook, it's at Damani Bryant Felder. There's a personal profile and there's a public figure profile. They're not the same, so I follow both. On Instagram, I am at the Damani Felder. I'm under a vicious shadow ban right now, but it's TheDamaniFelder. On Twitter, I'm at the Damani Felder, spelled the same way. On TikTok, I'm at the Damani Felder, spelled the same way. On Gab, I'm at Dominator14. That's DAMANATOR 14. On MeWe, I believe I am just at Damani Felder. Search me up there. On Telegram, my channel is Damani Felder. Is that everything these days? I don't even know.
Wow.
Parler was the Damani Felder as well, but I spread myself very thin. Oh, and on YouTube, I'm at The Wright Brothers. That's THERIGHT Brothers. So look for us there. And what you will see me doing this next year is more of the same, but at a more heightened level of urgency. I will continue to create content. I'll continue to amplify my voice and the voices of others who are speaking up for what is right and true. I've had individuals approach me talking about possibly running for office one day. That may or may not be the plan. We'll see what happens. God's in control, but if I feel his calling me a certain direction, then it's my duty to follow through on that. So we will see. But until then, I'm going to continue to make content that's going to provoke people to think for themselves and to engage in that thoughtful dialogue. So thank you, Mike, for having me. I appreciate it. I really enjoyed it. We should do this again sometime.
Yeah, man.
But God bless you and everything you do, and keep up the good work over there. You got all my support.
Yeah, man. Appreciate you coming on. God bless you, man. We'll be in touch.
Absolutely. Take care.
Yeah, you too. All right. Guys, I will catch you guys in the next stream. I think he's backstage. I'm still trying to figure out how this whole thing works out. I'll catch you guys in the next stream.